Have you ever stood in front of the mirror, staring into your own eyes, and suddenly realized you're looking at a stranger? That moment hit me at 3:47 a.m. on a cold December morning. The reflection staring back wasn't just tired, it was hollow, empty, a shell of what could have been. Right there, in that merciless fluorescent bathroom light, I made a decision that would alter the course of my entire existence. The person I had been up until that moment needed to die. Think about that word for a moment. Die. Not change, not improve, not gradually transform. Die. Because that's what it takes to truly rebuild yourself. Anything less is just decoration on a crumbling foundation. You're here because something inside you recognizes this truth. That gnawing feeling in your gut when you lay awake at night. That whisper in the back of your mind telling you there's more. It's not just discontent, it's your future self screaming across time, begging you to take the first step into the abyss of transformation. The comfortable lies we tell ourselves are the sweetest poison. I'll start Monday. Just one more year in this job. Things will get better on their own. Each compromise, each postponement, each justification for staying the same is another brick in the prison we build around our potential. The tragedy isn't that we fail to reach our dreams, it's that we convince ourselves they weren't meant for us in the first place. Let me be brutally honest. The path I'm about to show you isn't for everyone. Most people will hear these words and retreat to the comfort of their familiar chains. They'll label this message as too extreme, too demanding, too solitary, and they're right. It is. Breaking free from your old self is the most violent act of love you can commit. It's a personal revolution that demands total surrender before victory. But you're different. I can feel it in your presence here, in your willingness to even consider this journey. The very fact that these words resonate with you is proof that you're ready. Ready to face the most challenging opponent you'll ever encounter, the person you've become. The awakening begins with a simple but devastating realization. Everything you think you are is a collection of borrowed behaviors, inherited limitations, and accumulated compromises. Your fears, learned, your boundaries, inherited, your beliefs about what's possible. Programmed, the person you call you is largely a composite sketch, drawn by your past experiences, other people's expectations, and society's conditioning. Consider this: how many of your daily decisions are truly yours? How many of your beliefs have you personally verified? How many of your dreams did you choose, and how many were chosen for you? The answer to these questions usually triggers one of two responses: denial or despair. But there's a third option: determination. The path of total transformation requires something most personal development programs never mention: the courage to be alone. Not just physically alone, but emotionally, mentally, and spiritually independent. Because the truth is, you cannot rebuild yourself while continuously seeking validation from the very world that built your prison. The price of staying the same is paid in years, but we settle the bill in regrets. Each day you postpone your awakening, another piece of your potential calcifies into limitation. Another dream fades into the realm of what if. Another version of you dies quietly in the graveyard of good intentions. But here's where it gets interesting. The very pain that brings you to this point is also your greatest ally. The dissatisfaction with your current reality. It's not your enemy, it's your compass. The discomfort you feel when you think about radical change. It's not warning you away, it's pointing you toward growth. The awakening I'm describing isn't gentle. It's not a gradual shift or a comfortable transition. It's a deliberate discontinuity, a chosen crisis, a controlled burn of everything you've outgrown. And just like a forest fire clears the way for new growth, This destruction is actually the first act of creation. You might be wondering why such extreme measures are necessary. Why not just make small, incremental changes? Here's why incremental change maintains the core structure of who you are. It's like renovating a house room by room while living in it. But what if the foundation itself is flawed? What if the very blueprint of your life needs to be redrawn? The most dangerous prison is the one where you can't see the bars, where the walls are built from your own beliefs about what's possible, what you deserve, what you're capable of. These invisible barriers are far more restrictive than any physical constraints because they operate on the level of identity. They become part of who you think you are. But here's the liberating truth. You are not who you think you are. You are not your past. You are not your habits. You are not your failures or your successes. You are not even your current thoughts or emotions. You are the awareness behind all of these things, the consciousness that can observe, choose, and change. This realization is both terrifying and liberating. Terrifying because it means you have no excuses left. Liberating because it means you have no limitations except those you choose to maintain. The person you've been up until now was playing a role, wearing a mask, living out a script. But you can put down that script at any moment. You can walk off that stage. You can write a new story. The awakening phase is about facing these truths without flinching. It's about developing the courage to look at your life with complete honesty and ask the hard questions. What parts of me are truly mine, and what parts am I ready to release? What dreams have I abandoned, and am I willing to reclaim them? What price am I paying to remain the same, and am I willing to pay the price of change instead? This is where most people stop reading, stop listening, stop engaging, because these questions demand answers that will shatter their comfortable illusions. But you're still here, aren't you? Still resonating with these words, still feeling that pull towards something greater. That's not coincidence, that's recognition. The old you is like a program running on autopilot, executing the same patterns day after day, producing the same results year after year. But just as a computer can be reprogrammed, your entire being can be reconstructed. The key is understanding that you are not the program, you are the programmer. As we stand at the threshold of your transformation, understand this: the journey ahead will demand everything from you. Your old relationships may not survive this evolution. Your current comfort zones will be demolished. Your familiar patterns will be disrupted. But in return, you'll receive something priceless, the chance to become who you were meant to be before the world told you who to be. The awakening is just the first step, but it's the step that makes all others possible. It's the moment you decide that the pain of remaining the same finally exceeds the pain of change. It's when you realize that the person you are has served its purpose, and now it's time for something new to emerge from the ashes of who you used to be. Remember that moment in the mirror I mentioned? That wasn't the end of my story, it was the beginning. Just as this moment right now isn't the end of your story, it's the first sentence in a new chapter. The old you has served its purpose. It got you here, to this moment of recognition, to this point of no return. Honor it for that service, and then let it go. Because what comes next will require someone entirely new. The demolition phase awaits, and with it, the real work begins. But first you must make a choice, not a small choice about what to change or improve, but a fundamental choice about who you're willing to become. The choice between comfortable stagnation and uncomfortable growth, between the known limitations of your current self and the unknown potential of who you could be. What's your answer? Your answer echoes in the silence, doesn't it? That choice to transform, to truly demolish everything you've been. It's not just a decision, it's a declaration of war against your own limitations, and like any war, it demands strategy, ruthlessness, and an unwavering commitment to victory. Now comes the part that most transformation guides conveniently skip over: the systematic destruction of everything you've been. This isn't about minor adjustments or surface-level changes. This is about demolition at the foundation level. Think of yourself as a building that needs to be torn down to its very foundation before something new can rise in its place. Let's start with the most insidious enemy: your patterns. Every day, you run through thousands of automated responses, ways of thinking, emotional reactions, physical habits. These patterns aren't just behaviors, they're the neural pathways that have become the default operating system of your life. They're so familiar that they feel like you, but they're not you. They're just the grooves worn into your consciousness by years of repetition. Take a moment right now to identify your most deeply ingrained pattern. Maybe it's the instant reach for your phone when you feel uncomfortable. Perhaps it's the automatic self-doubt when faced with opportunity, or the reflexive need for validation before making decisions. These patterns aren't random. They're sophisticated survival mechanisms you develop to protect yourself. But here's the brutal truth: the very patterns that once protected you are now your prison. The demolition begins with isolation, strategic isolation. This isn't about becoming a hermit. It's about creating the space necessary for deep internal work. Think about it. How can you hear your own truth when you're constantly drowning in other people's opinions, expectations, and energy? The people around you, even those who love you, are invested in you staying the same. Your transformation threatens their comfort, challenges their choices, disturbs their equilibrium. This is where it gets uncomfortable. You need to be willing to sit with yourself in complete honesty. No distractions, no escapes, no numbing agents. Just you, face to face with every pattern, every belief, every emotional dependency you've cultivated. It's like being in a room with mirrors on every wall, nowhere to hide from your own reflection. The first layer to demolish is your emotional dependencies. We're taught that needing others is healthy, that interdependence is mature. But let's be brutally honest. How many of your emotional dependencies are actually just ways to avoid facing yourself? How often do you use relationships, validation, or external approval as bandages for internal wounds? Start tracking your emotional reactions like a scientist observing an experiment. When do you automatically reach out to others for comfort? When do you seek validation? When do you abandon your own judgment in favor of external opinions? Each of these moments isn't just a habit. It's a crack in your foundation, a place where you've outsourced your power to something or someone outside yourself. The next level of demolition targets your identity structures, the stories you tell yourself about who you are. I'm not good with money. I'm always late. I can't handle confrontation. I'm not creative. These aren't facts. They're narratives you've accepted and reinforced over time. Each one is a self-imposed limitation masquerading as truth. It's time to dynamite these false identities. Here's a truth that might shake you. You don't have one false identity. You have dozens. You're running multiple programs, wearing different masks, playing various roles depending on who you're with and what you think is expected of you. The you that exists at work is different from the you with family, which is different from the you when you're alone. Which one is real? None of them. They're all constructs, all performances, all limitation. The demolition process requires you to confront your shadows, those parts of yourself you've denied, suppressed, or rejected. Your anger, your ambition, your darkness, your light, your power. These aren't aspects to be eliminated. They're forces to be integrated. Every part you reject
becomes a blind spot, a weakness, a point of unconscious sabotage. Think of your psyche like a house where you've locked certain rooms and pretended they don't exist. But those locked rooms still affect the entire structure. They still consume energy. They still influence every decision you make. The demolition phase is about breaking down those doors, walking into those rooms, and reclaiming every part of yourself, even the parts that terrify you. This is where most people falter. They start the demolition process, but retreat when they hit something that feels too core, too essential, too scary to question. But partial demolition is more dangerous than no demolition at all. It creates instability in the structure. You can't build something new on a partially demolished foundation. The art of strategic isolation becomes crucial here. You need to create a containment zone around yourself, a space where you can safely detonate these emotional a space where you can safely detonate these emotional psychological explosives without collateral damage. Might mean reducing social media exposure that reinforces old patterns, limiting time with people who unconsciously pull you back into old roles, creating physical and emotional boundaries that protect your transformation space, developing a relationship with solitude that goes beyond mere relation time. But isolation isn't just about creating external space. It's about developing internal silence, the kind of silence where you can hear the subtle voices of self-deception, the whispered lies you tell yourself, the self-deception, the whispered lies you tell yourself, the quiet agreements you've made with mediocrity. In this silence, patterns become visible, dependencies become obvious, fantasies become obvious, false identities become transparent. As you move through this phase, you'll encounter what I call the void point, the moment when you've demolished enough of your old self to feel groundless. This is where most people panic and try to rebuild the old structures quickly. The void is not your enemy. It's the space from which your new self will emerge. Learning to be comfortable in this void is crucial. Learning to be comfortable in this void is crucial because it's where true power is true. The demolition phase also requires you to confront your relationship with pain, not just physical pain, but emotional,
Most of your current limitations are pain avoidance strategies. You've built elaborate structures to prevent feeling certain types of discomfort. But here's the paradox. By avoiding pain, you've created a much deeper, more persistent form of suffering, the pain of unrealized potential. This is where the real test begins. Can you stay present with discomfort without trying to escape it? Can you face uncertainty without rushing to false certainty? Can you stand in the midst of your own demolition without trying to prematurely rebuild? These aren't just philosophical questions, they're practical challenges you'll face daily during this phase. The demolition process also extends to your environment, your physical space, your daily routines, your social circles. Everything must be examined and, where necessary, dismantled. Your environment isn't just a backdrop. It's an active participant in maintaining who you are. Every object in your space, every person in your life, every routine you follow is either supporting your transformation or anchoring you to your old self. This is where the process becomes both practical and profound. Start with your physical space. What objects are holding energy from your old self? What possessions are anchoring old stories? What items are maintaining outdated versions of you? The physical demolition becomes a mirror for the internal work. As you move deeper into the demolition phase, you'll discover that what you thought was your personality is actually a collection of coping mechanisms. Your sense of humor, possibly a way to deflect deep connection, your perfectionism, perhaps a shield against vulnerability, your procrastination, maybe a protection against potential failure. Each of these mechanisms needs to be recognized, understood, and consciously dismantled. But here's where it gets interesting. As you dismantle these mechanisms, you'll experience moments of startling clarity. You'll see how much energy you've been investing in maintaining these false structures. You'll realize how much of your vital force has been tied up in keeping these patterns in place. And as you release them, that energy becomes available for transformation. The demolition phase isn't just about breaking things down, it's about reclaiming your power from everywhere you've invested it. From old relationships that no longer serve you, from beliefs that limit you, from fears that control you, from patterns that restrict you. This reclamation of power is essential because you'll need every ounce of energy for the reconstruction phase that follows. As we near the end of this demolition phase, you might feel more unstable than ever before. Good, stability is overrated. The universe itself is built on chaos and change. Your attachment to stability has been one of the primary forces keeping you small. In this demolition phase, you're not just breaking down old structures, you're breaking free from the need for false certainty. Remember, demolition isn't destruction for destruction's sake. Every piece you dismantle, every pattern you break, every false identity you shed, creates space for something new to emerge. You're not just breaking down, you're breaking through. The rubble of your old self becomes the raw material for your reconstruction. As the dust settles on this phase of demolition, you might feel exposed, vulnerable, maybe even a bit lost. Perfect. This means you're ready for what comes next. Because once the old structure is completely demolished, once the foundation is fully exposed, once you're standing in the creative void of possibility, that's when the real magic begins. The Phoenix Protocol awaits, where we'll begin the systematic process of rebuilding from these ashes. But first, take a moment to honor the courage it took to come this far. You've done what most people will never dare to do, faced yourself with complete honesty and chosen to demolish everything that no longer serves your evolution. The question now isn't whether you can rebuild, it's who you'll choose to become with this clean slate you've created. Are you ready to find out? That clean slate you've created. It's not just empty space, it's pure potential. Standing in the void of your demolished self, you might feel naked, exposed, perhaps even afraid. But this emptiness is your greatest ally, because now, for the first time, you can build something entirely new, unconstrained by the limitations of who you used to be. Welcome to the Phoenix Protocol, the systematic process of rising from your own ashes. This isn't about random self-improvement or scattered personal development. This is about architectural precision in the reconstruction of your entire being. Just as a phoenix doesn't partially emerge from its ashes, you won't partially transform. This is total rebirth. Let's start with the most fundamental truth about transformation. Your brain is literally rewiring itself every moment of every day. This isn't metaphorical, it's pure neuroscience. Every thought you think, every emotion you feel, every action you take is either strengthening existing neural pathways or creating new ones. The question isn't whether you're changing, it's whether you're changing by design or by default. The Phoenix Protocol begins with a precise blueprint of who you're becoming, not who you want to be. That's too vague, too contaminated by old programming. Instead, we're designing who you're becoming. The distinction is crucial. Wanting is passive, becoming is active. Wanting lives in the realm of wishful thinking, becoming lives in the realm of strategic action. Think of your consciousness as a vast network of neural pathways. Some of these pathways are like superhighways, thoughts and behaviors you've repeated so many times they've become automatic. Others are like narrow trails, potential new ways of being that haven't been fully developed yet. The key to transformation is understanding that you can deliberately construct new highways while allowing old ones to fade through disuse. This is where the solitude advantage becomes your secret weapon. In isolation, you can focus all your energy on building these new neural pathways without the constant interference of old triggers and patterns. Every time you respond differently to a situation, every time you choose a new thought pattern, every time you embody a different emotional state, you're literally carving new pathways in your brain. But here's what most transformation teachings miss. You can't just focus on the new. You must simultaneously maintain awareness of the old patterns trying to reassert themselves. Think of it like building a new city while keeping watch for saboteurs from the old regime. These saboteurs come in many forms: old habits trying to sneak back in, familiar emotional responses attempting to hijack your new programming, comfortable patterns seeking to re-establish their dominance. The protocol demands radical environment design: your physical space, your daily schedule, your information diet. Everything must be engineered to support your new neural architecture. This isn't about motivation or willpower. It's about creating an environment where your transformation is the path of least resistance, where becoming your new self requires less energy than remaining your old self. Consider this: every object in your space either reinforces your new identity or echoes your old one. Every person in your life either catalyzes your evolution or anchors you to past versions of yourself. Every routine either builds your new neural pathways or maintains the old ones. The Phoenix Protocol requires you to be ruthlessly selective about these influences. Let's talk about the science of identity change. Your identity isn't a fixed thing. It's a complex network of beliefs, behaviors, and self-images that can be systematically reconstructed. The key is understanding that your identity is maintained through consistency. Whatever you do consistently, you become. This isn't philosophy, it's neurobiology. Your brain strengthens the neural pathways that get used most frequently. This is where most people make a crucial mistake. They try to change their actions without first changing their self-image. But your actions will always align with your self-image, always. This is why the Phoenix Protocol begins with identity reconstruction at the neural level. We're not just changing what you do, we're changing who you believe you are at the most fundamental level. The process requires what I call identity scaffolding, temporary structures that support your new self-image while it solidifies. These scaffolds might include new daily rituals that reinforce your emerging identity, environmental cues that trigger new neural pathways, carefully chosen challenges that strengthen new patterns, strategic isolation that protects your developing neural architecture. But here's where it gets interesting. As you build these new neural pathways, you'll experience what neuroscientists call temporary destabilization, moments where you feel uncertain, uncomfortable, almost like you're losing your grip on reality. This isn't a sign of failure, it's evidence of successful rewiring. Your brain is literally restructuring itself. The protocol demands absolute trust in this process, not blind faith, but educated trust based on understanding the neuroscience of transformation. Every moment of discomfort is evidence of new neural pathways being formed. Every instance of uncertainty is proof that old patterns are being disrupted. Every feeling of destabilization is confirmation that real change is occurring. This is where the power of strategic solitude becomes crucial. In isolation, you can maintain the consistent focus needed to strengthen these new neural pathways without constant environmental interference. Think of it like practicing a new skill. You need focused, uninterrupted time to develop mastery. Your new identity requires the same dedicated attention. The protocol also involves what I call neuroplastic acceleration, specific practices that speed up the formation of new neural pathways. This includes intense visualization of your new patterns and behaviors, deliberate emotional rehearsal of your new responses, physical embodiment of your new identity, systematic exposure to carefully chosen challenges. But remember, this isn't just about adding new patterns, it's about maintaining awareness of the old patterns trying to reassert themselves. Your old neural pathways don't just disappear, they fade through disuse. This requires constant vigilance, especially in the early stages of transformation. Every time you catch an old pattern and choose a new response, you're simultaneously weakening the old pathway while strengthening the new one. The Phoenix Protocol also demands the development of unshakable self-trust. This isn't the superficial self-confidence promoted by motivational speakers. This is deep, neurobiological self-trust built through consistent internal integrity. Every time you make a commitment to yourself and keep it, you're strengthening the neural pathways of self-trust. Every time you choose your transformation over temporary comfort, you're building this essential foundation. Think of self-trust as the operating system on which all other changes run. Without it, no transformation can be sustained. This is why the protocol emphasizes small, consistent wins in the beginning. Each small victory strengthens your self-trust neural pathways, creating a positive feedback loop that accelerates your transformation. As you progress through the protocol, you'll notice something fascinating. Your perception of reality begins to shift. This isn't imagination. It's your brain literally filtering reality differently through your new neural pathways. Opportunities you never noticed before become obvious. Resources you thought were unavailable suddenly appear. Possibilities you couldn't conceive of become clear. This perceptual shift is crucial because it creates a self-reinforcing cycle. As you perceive more opportunities, you take more action. As you take more action, you get more results. As you get more results, your new neural pathways strengthen. As your new pathways strengthen, you perceive even more opportunities. This is how transformation becomes self-sustaining. The protocol also involves what I call identity boundary protection, the systematic process of defending your new neural architecture from external interference. This isn't about being antisocial, it's about being selectively social. Every interaction either reinforces your new neural pathways or challenges them. Choose wisely. As we approach the end of this phase, it's crucial to understand that the Phoenix Protocol isn't a one-time process. Just as a software system needs regular updates, your neural architecture requires continuous refinement. The difference is that now you have the understanding and tools to manage this evolution consciously. The reconstruction phase awaits, where we'll turn these new neural pathways into concrete reality. But first, take a moment to appreciate the magnitude of what you're undertaking. You're not just changing a few habits or learning new skills. You're literally rewiring your brain, reconstructing your identity, and rewriting your reality at the neural level. The question now becomes, with this understanding of your brain's infinite capacity for change, with these tools for conscious evolution, with this protocol for systematic transformation, what version of yourself will you choose to bring into existence? Are you ready to turn this neurological theory into living reality? Theory becomes reality the moment you take that first decisive action. Standing here with your new neural pathways primed and your transformation protocol in place, you're ready for the most critical phase of your journey, the reconstruction. This isn't just about building something new, it's about architecting an entirely new reality around the person you're becoming. Remember that question about what version of yourself you'll choose to bring into existence? The answer begins with understanding that reconstruction isn't just mental, it's physical, emotional, and environmental. Your new identity must be built into the very fabric of your daily existence. Every moment, every action, every choice becomes a brick in the foundation of who you're becoming. The first principle of reconstruction is what I call identity embodiment. Your body isn't just a vehicle for your transformation, it's an active participant in creating your new reality. The way you move, breathe, hold yourself, and occupy space either reinforces or contradicts your new identity. Think about it. Does your physical presence align with who you're becoming, or is it still carrying the patterns of who you used to be? This is where the practice of deliberate evolution becomes crucial. Start with your morning ritual, not just what you do, but how you do it. The moment you open your eyes, your body and mind are either reinforcing your new patterns or defaulting to old ones. Your first breath, your first movement, your first thought. These aren't just habits, they're architectural decisions shaping your new reality. Consider this: every movement you make is either an expression of your old identity or a manifestation of your new one. When you walk, are you moving with the hesitation of your past self or the confidence of your future self? When you speak, is your voice carrying the timidity of old fears or the resonance of newfound power? These aren't superficial adjustments, they're fundamental choices that literally reshape your neural circuitry. The reconstruction phase demands what I call environmental congruence. Your physical space must become a reflection of a catalyst for your transformation. Look around you right now. Every object, every color, every arrangement either supports your evolution or anchors you to the past. This isn't about interior design, it's about creating a physical space that makes your transformation inevitable. But here's where most people falter. They try to rebuild while maintaining connections to their old reality. Remember, you're not renovating, you're rebuilding from the ground up. This means every relationship, every commitment, every routine must be re-evaluated through the lens of your new identity. Does it serve who you're becoming, or does it echo who you used to be? The art of self-parenting becomes essential here. Think of yourself as both the architect and the building material of your new life. The architect must be ruthlessly clear about the design, while the building material, your daily habits, choices, and actions must be meticulously shaped to fit that design. This requires a level of self-discipline that most people never develop. But discipline isn't what you think it is. It's not about forcing yourself to do things you hate. True discipline is about aligning your actions with your evolution so completely that doing anything else feels like a violation of your nature. When your identity is fully aligned with your aspirations, discipline becomes natural. It's not a fight against yourself. It's an expression of yourself. The reconstruction process requires what I call identity anchoring, creating unshakable reference points for your new self. These anchors might be physical spaces that reflect your new identity, daily rituals that reinforce your transformation, challenges that demand your evolutions, boundaries that protect your new reality. Each of these anchors must be consciously designed and consistently maintained. Think of them as the load-bearing walls of your new life. They're not optional extras, they're essential structures that support everything else. Mental fortitude isn't just about positive thinking,
It's about architectural integrity in your thought patterns. Every thought either strengthens or weakens your new structure. This requires a level of mental discipline that goes beyond mere motivation. You must become the guardian of your mental space, carefully filtering every thought, emotion, and influence based on whether it supports your reconstruction. This is where the practice of deliberate discomfort becomes crucial. Growth doesn't happen in the comfort zone, we know this, but most people misunderstand what this means. It's not about seeking pain for pain's sake. It's about strategically choosing challenges that force your new identity to strengthen and solidify. Every carefully chosen discomfort is like a stress test for your new structure. The reconstruction phase also demands what I call emotional architecture. Your emotional responses must be rebuilt from the ground up. This isn't about suppressing emotions, it's about consciously choosing how you respond to them. Every emotional trigger becomes an opportunity to reinforce your new patterns rather than defaulting to old ones. Think of your emotional life as a series of pathways. The old you had deeply worn tracks of emotional reactivity, automatic responses that happened without conscious choice. The new you needs new pathways, consciously designed and deliberately maintained. This requires constant awareness and consistent choice in how you process and express emotions. The practice of self-parenting becomes particularly crucial here. You must become both the nurturing guide and the firm boundary setter for yourself. When old emotional patterns arise, your inner parent needs to respond with both compassion and unwavering commitment to your new standards. This isn't about being harsh with yourself. It's about being consistently supportive of your evolution. Physical reconstruction is equally vital. Your body is not just carrying your transformation, it's actively participating in it. Every physical choice you make either reinforces or undermines your new identity. The way you eat, move, sleep, and care for yourself must align with who you're becoming. This isn't about aesthetics, it's about creating physical congruence with your new identity. But here's the crucial understanding. Physical reconstruction isn't just about exercise or diet. It's about how you occupy space in the world. The way you stand, sit, move, and interact with your environment either expresses your new identity or betrays it. Every physical action is either a statement of who you're becoming or a reminder of who you used to be. The reconstruction phase also requires what I call boundary architecture. Your boundaries aren't just rules or limitations, they're the structural walls that protect your new identity. Every yes or no you give is either reinforcing these walls or creating weak points in your foundation.
This requires a complete redesign of how you interact with the world and what you allow into your space. Think of your boundaries as the immune system of your new identity. They must be strong enough to reject anything that threatens your evolution, yet flexible enough to allow growth and adaptation. This isn't about isolation. It's about selective permeability. You must consciously choose what influences, relationships, and opportunities align with your new structure. The practice of daily evolution becomes your cornerstone. Every day must contain elements that actively build and strengthen your new identity. This isn't about massive changes or dramatic gestures. It's about consistent, deliberate choices that align with who you're becoming. Each day is either a brick in your new foundation or a crack in your structure. As we approach the final phase of your transformation, remember this: reconstruction isn't just about building something new. It's about creating something so solid, so congruent, so deeply aligned with your true potential that returning to your old identity becomes impossible. Not because you're forcing yourself to stay changed, but because you've built something that makes your old self obsolete. The rise awaits, that moment, when your reconstruction becomes so complete that your transformation becomes self-sustaining. But first, ask yourself, is every aspect of your life now aligned with who you're becoming? Are your physical space, daily routines, relationships, and choices all supporting your evolution? Is your reconstruction complete, or are there still areas requiring architectural attention? Your answers to these questions will determine the strength and sustainability of your transformation. Are you ready to ensure that every element of your existence supports the extraordinary being you're becoming? Those questions about alignment and sustainability reveal a profound truth. Your reconstruction isn't just a phase, it's the foundation of an entirely new way of being. Now comes the moment that every phoenix knows intimately: the rise. This isn't just about emerging from the ashes of your old self. It's about soaring to heights that your previous version couldn't even imagine. The rise begins with a startling realization. Your transformation isn't just changing you, it's changing the very reality you inhabit. Think about it. As you've demolished, rebuilt, and reconstructed yourself, you've been simultaneously creating ripples in the fabric of your existence. Every choice, every action, every moment of growth has been altering the field of possibilities around you. This is where manifestation becomes more than a buzzword. When you've completely reconstructed yourself at the identity level, reality has no choice but to reorganize itself around your new vibration. This isn't magical thinking, it's the natural consequence of complete internal alignment. When your thoughts, emotions, actions, and energy are all pointing in the same direction, the universe responds accordingly. But here's where you must be vigilant. As you rise, the old world will try to pull you back, not out of malice, but out of the natural tendency of systems to maintain homeostasis. The people, situations, and circumstances that were comfortable with your old self will unconsciously resist your evolution. This isn't personal, it's physics. Every rise creates resistance. The maintenance of boundaries becomes crucial now, but in a different way than before. During reconstruction, boundaries were about protection. Now, they're about projection, clearly communicating to the world who you've become and what you will and won't accept. This isn't about being harsh or unyielding, it's about being so clearly defined in your new identity that others naturally adjust their expectations and behavior. Consider this: every interaction you have is either an opportunity to reinforce your new reality or a test of your commitment to it. The way you respond to challenges, handle relationships, and navigate obstacles either confirms or contradicts your transformation. There's no neutral ground anymore. Every moment is a declaration of who you've become. The rise phase introduces what I call reality calibration, the process of bringing your external world into complete alignment with your internal transformation. This means upgrading your environments to match your new standards, evolving or ending relationships that don't support your new trajectory, creating opportunities that match your new capabilities, establishing systems that maintain your elevated state. But here's the critical understanding. The rise isn't about leaving others behind, it's about becoming a living example of what's possible. Your transformation, when complete, becomes a lighthouse for others who are ready for their own journey. Not because you're trying to guide them, but because your very existence proves that radical change is possible. The responsibility of rebirth is not a burden, it's a natural expression of who you've become. As you rise, you'll find that you naturally inspire others, not through preaching or pushing, but through the simple fact of your transformation. Your journey becomes evidence that the impossible is achievable, that complete reinvention is possible, that one can indeed destroy and rebuild themselves alone. This is where leadership through transformation becomes your natural state. Not leadership in the traditional sense of directing others, but leadership through embodiment. Your very presence becomes a catalyst for change in others. Your success in destroying and rebuilding yourself creates a field of possibility that others can feel and respond to. But remember this, your rise must be sustainable. This isn't about reaching a peak and then falling back. It's about establishing a new baseline from which you can continue to evolve. This requires what I call evolutionary momentum, the ability to maintain forward movement even when the initial intensity of transformation subsides. Think of it like this: your rise isn't a destination, it's a launch pad. Each level you reach becomes the foundation for your next evolution. This is where the eternal evolution mindset becomes crucial. You're not trying to arrive somewhere, you're establishing a permanent state of conscious evolution. The rise phase also demands what I call reality mastery, the ability to maintain your new state regardless of external circumstances. This isn't about controlling the world around you, it's about maintaining internal coherence regardless of external chaos. Your new identity must be so solid that it remains stable even in the face of challenges and changes. Consider the profound responsibility of your transformation. You're not just changing yourself, you're adding to the collective evidence that radical change is possible. Every success you maintain, every challenge you overcome, every level you reach becomes part of the larger story of human potential. This isn't pressure, it's inspiration. The maintenance of your rise requires what I call conscious calibration, regular check-ins with yourself to ensure all aspects of your life remain aligned with your evolution. Are your daily choices still supporting your growth? Are your relationships still nurturing your expansion? Are your goals still challenging enough to maintain your momentum? But here's the beautiful paradox. As you rise, effort begins to feel effortless, not because you're not working hard, but because you're operating in complete alignment with your true nature. The struggle diminishes not because the challenges become easier, but because you become stronger. The resistance fades not because obstacles disappear, but because you learn to use them as fuel for your continued evolution. The rise phase also introduces what I call reality creation, the active process of shaping your world to match your vision. This isn't about forcing things to happen, it's about becoming so aligned with your goals that their manifestation becomes natural. Your very presence begins to organize reality around your intentions. Think about the immense power of this position. You're no longer at the mercy of circumstances, you're the architect of your reality. Every choice you make, every standard you maintain, every boundary you hold creates ripples that shape your world. This isn't about controlling everything, it's about influencing the field of possibilities through your own alignment. As we reach the conclusion of this journey, understand this. The person who started listening to these words no longer exists. That version of you has been systematically dismantled, consciously reconstructed, and completely transformed. What remains is something entirely new, a being capable of continuous evolution, conscious creation, and unlimited growth. The question now becomes, what will you do with this power? How will you use this transformed version of yourself? What realities will you create from this elevated state of being? Remember, this isn't the end of your journey. It's the beginning of an entirely new way of existing. Your rise is now a beacon for others, proof that the impossible is achievable, that one can indeed destroy and rebuild themselves alone. But more importantly, it's your new foundation, your launching pad for whatever comes next. The only question that remains is, what heights will you reach from here? The journey of transformation never truly ends. It only evolves into new forms, reaches for new heights, explores new possibilities. You've learned to destroy and rebuild yourself once. You now have this power forever. Use it wisely, use it consciously, and never stop rising. What reality will you create next?